I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. Today, we'd like to welcome to the podcast Brad Sheasby. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Sweet. Brad works with healthcare clients in the Denver metro area for CARR, helping them in their real estate transactions from startups to business transitions and everything in between. From ground up construction projects or building purchases to lease negotiations. Brad has helped his clients close on nearly $40 million. Wow, I didn't read this earlier. $40 million in real estate, representing nearly 70 transactions in just the last 3 years. That's a lot of doctors. Brad is considered an expert in healthcare real estate, having saved his clients several $1 million and having helped them avoid the costly mistakes that so many doctors and business owners make when attempting to represent themselves in these transactions. Okay, this is a long bio. Brad is currently actively working with several dozen clients who trust his expertise and skill in achieving the best possible terms for their practices and businesses. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry about the long bio.
No, you're fine. Reading out loud is not one of my skills.
Okay. Fair enough.
My kids are always like, "Mom, read," and I'm like, "No."
It's not going to go well.
It's not going to go well. It hurts my brain. No. So, what was your first job?
So my first job, and I'll leave out the odd jobs, landscaping. Everybody does the landscaping.
It's so funny. I never landscaped, but a ton of people apparently have.
Yeah,
we get that answer a lot.
Mow the yard, did landscaping for like my mom's friends and all that kind of stuff. So I'll fast forward the first job where I had like a W-9 because that kind of tells you this is a real job.
Yeah.
I worked we had a friend of the family that had a chain of physical therapy clinics all over the Southeast, but primarily in Florida. Mm-hmm. And so they had been longtime family friends. So I lived in Texas at the time, but I went and stayed with him for the summer and worked in one of his physical therapy clinics as a physical therapy technician for the summer. And I loved it. It was just kind of it was a fun summer and worked in these clinics and kind of got to understand what it was and what they did. And physical therapy technician is a glorified term, at least it was at that point, for I did whatever the physical therapist told me to do. So it was...
You were the physical therapist gopher.
Yeah, it was just whatever we did. It was like laundry and... applying. We did apply like hot and cold to people. They would come in for their treatments, and we'd have these ice packs or heat packs. I don't think they even do that as much anymore as they used to, but that was like at that time. And again, this was I'm gonna date myself. This was in like the 90s.
Yeah. Hot and cold was the thing.
Hot and cold. It was the thing, man. Just hot and cold, hot and cold. So we would do that and apply treatments and just whatever else they told us to do. So
that's funny.
So that's what I would consider probably my first like real job, although I did a lot of things before that.
You just reminded me, I went to basketball camp in high school up at CSU, and I twisted my ankle was always an issue, and so they put us in like the cold bath, and then you'd go in the warm bath.
Yes, right.
But it was like the first time I'd ever been in like a actual like sports PT place, because ours was like a closet in the high school, but like they had like the hot and cold pools and they had massage and whatever, and so the trainers would take us back and like hot and cold.
Yeah, that's right.
Like into the tubs.
It was like the thing. Yeah, it was. I mean, for the most part, it was pretty mundane or routine. But I remember a couple times we had these weird deal. Like one guy someone tried to steal his truck, and he like jumped in and tried to stop them from stealing it, and they just drove off and dragged him.
Oh my God.
And so he came in and he just like road rash. It was awful. I just remember he kind of traumatized by that. And then there was someone else who worked in
let people jack your truck.
Yeah, just go. Insurance will take care of it, and you don't want to get messed up like this guy did. And there was another guy whose foot got run over by a forklift. So he had to come in and get like we had this bath, that would go and clean. It was, his toe was like the size of a, orange or something. It was awful. So those are the traumatic memories of my first job. But for the most part, I enjoyed it, and it was fun to kind of.
That's awesome. When it was your start in healthcare.
Yeah, that was, so at least when I kind of later down the road came into work, and I work with physical therapists, it's one of the verticals that I work with, I had a frame of reference for
Yeah.
what they do and who they are and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. So how did you get started in commercial real estate?
So, several years ago, I had done a lot of different things, a lot of different jobs. I did stuff in the tech sector, communications, like all different kinds of things before I came in. But I'd always been interested in real estate, and particularly commercial real estate. So I had someone that I knew who was a family friend, and then actually several people that worked for CARR. And so, I was in a position where I was looking for something different, looking to transition, and it was kind of like, hey, it's now or never. Let's go and do what I really want to do. And so I placed a call to him, and he's someone who's still part of our company. He's one of our executives, and just said, hey, what do you have? You know, what's there? And at the time when I came on to CARR, we had, it was less than 30 brokers, maybe 25 across the country, and we're only in a couple of markets now. We have over 100 across the country, so grown substantially in that time frame. But that was the start, and just kind of jumped in with both feet, learned everything I could learn about it, and just kind of force feed yourself and educate yourself, and then just go after it.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about CARR. So CARR's originated here, right?
Yeah, started in Denver metro area. Our office is in Lone Tree. That's our corporate office. It was founded by Colin CARR, and that's where obviously the name comes from. He was a broker in another brokerage firm, nationally known brokerage firm, and just there were a couple of things, as far as corporate culture, that he didn't enjoy. And the main impetus was that he had started doing some more healthcare deals, and just recognized on the few transactions he had done, a lot of them on the landlord side, where the landlord was massively taking advantage of these clients, because the doctors don't have time to really spend the time negotiating their lease. They don't have time to do the research required to understand what the market. They don't have the expertise, and so the landlords would just crush them on these negotiations. And so often Colin was working for the landlord, and he would see this happening and just thinking, it's not right.
That's not cool.
But the landlord's just doing their job. They're trying to maximize their profits, and he recognized that there was a huge need. So he went to his boss at the company that he was working for, and just said, I think that there's a niche here that we're not serving, and I would like to only represent just the tenant side, and I'd like to focus on healthcare. And his boss just said, that's dumb. It's not going to work. If you want to do that, then you should just go do it yourself. And he said, okay. And he left, and a few days later, he had his LLC, had a website up a week later, and started doing it immediately. And that was in 2009. So we're really just 10 years old. And for several years, just focused in the Denver metro area, just going after healthcare clients, and had a tremendous amount of success. Because the pitch is easy, right, for a healthcare or even just a real estate person, where you say, look, you're not going to pay me anything. It's 100% free to you, and for our clients, it is 100% free to them. I'm going to represent you and take all of the time that you would spend trying to figure this out on your own, or trying to negotiate on your own. I'm going to take the headache out of it, of the confrontation that you're going to have with your landlord. I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to do all the research for you. I'm going to find the best possible deal, the best possible location, negotiate the best possible terms that you probably didn't even know you could get, and all of it's free. And I'll help quarterback that whole process for you. So he would go and meet with doctors, and they would look at him and go, okay, that's the biggest no-brainer I've ever heard. You handle it for me. And just from transaction after transaction, working with vendors, helping, we work with a lot of different kinds of vendors, and the biggest complaint we get is, we just can't get doctors to move forward. We can't get them to make a decision. Sometimes they need to do a new project, or they really need to expand, or they need to go ahead and do a ground-up project or something to grow their practice, and they just won't pull the trigger. And part of it is just because there's this huge hurdle, right, of where do I even start?
Yeah, where do I go?
Yeah.
How do I get there?
Who do I talk to? I don't even know anything about the process, and they frankly are so busy being doctors and doing what they're doing that they don't have the time to figure that out. And so many of them are just frozen and paralyzed by the just kind of, it feels like this
The
huge
lack of
hill.
options.
Yeah. And so it was an easy pitch. He would come in, he would crush it for them, get them the best terms, find them the best locations, all of that. And then, of course, they would refer their friends. And so it just grew from there.
That's awesome.
And the big thing I think that makes us kind of unique, and just in general for CARR, and we do this cross country, is that we are tenant and buyer rep only. So we never represent landlords. We never represent sellers. When you have a broker that does represent both sides of the transaction, there's just an inherent conflict of interest that happens with that. And when I look at a client and say, I'm going to find you the absolute best possible location, terms, everything, I can mean it, because I know in the back of my mind I'm not thinking, oh, I've got a couple of listings that are my listings where I'll get a bigger commission or whatever, or I'm going to make my landlord really happy with me because I'm going to bring this client. And you think that that broker's working for you. The reality is their first fiduciary responsibility is to that landlord, and you're not going to get the best terms. So that's one of the big tenets of our company that makes us unique, is just that we never list properties. We only work for tenants and buyers. And so when we look at a landlord, we see someone whose interests are diametrically opposed to that
They're
of
on
our
the
clients.
other side of the table.
They're on the other
Every
side,
single
and they're
time.
always going to be on the other side of the table. A broker who works both sides sees a landlord as a potential client, and they can make a lot more money getting a big listing of a big shopping center over that one transaction. So that's kind of a unique thing that we do. And then, of course, the focus on healthcare. Although we are now expanding, and in a lot of markets we're expanding to do not just healthcare, but kind of take what we've learned from the healthcare space and transition it over to just general commercial. So in a lot of markets we're putting general commercial people that can serve any. And we have been. I mean, we always, all of the healthcare guys do.
Yeah.
Other
We take referrals.
general commercials. Yeah, we'll do anything, And what makes us also unique is because our clients are in office, they're in retail, they're in medical. We do deals in all of those sectors, and it's very rare to find brokers that understand, because they're really different worlds. Retail's a different world.
Very different.
From office, from medical office, they're all very unique. And I mean, I work with chiropractors, physical therapists, veterinarians, eye doctors, like all the way through. And so I have some that are only in medical office buildings. That's all they want to go into. Others, physical therapists, will go, well, we're basically referral based, so we'll go into any office
Yeah, we don't
building.
really care.
We just want the best deal, accessibility,
location, yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Good location so
Good
people
parking.
can get to us. All of that. Yeah, parking's hugely important. And then others, veterinarians, we can only be in retail because you can't go into an office building or a medical office building unless there's an outside entrance. So we work across all those sectors, and that makes us unique too on the commercial side, because we can help anybody with anything. And most of the time people are sort of specialized in just office or just retail or just medical, medical office, and we kind of do it all.
So you just answered that whole thing. So CARR specializes in mostly in healthcare. We just discussed that, but why is that so different? Like what makes healthcare completely different than any other professional services?
Yeah.
I mean, like as a CPA, we would just need offices,
Right.
That's
Right.
that's what our build out would be.
So-
but like veterinarians need.
Yes. So one of the differentiators there is, for instance, if and I can speak to this too, because even though it's healthcare, my physical therapy clients, their build out requirements are very similar to a standard office, right? So I can usually go in and get a build out turnkeyed for them, because they just need reception, they need kind of an open area that they call their gym, they need private treatment rooms. So that's the cubicle farm is their gym. They might have a conference room that they have to figure out what to do with if they want to kind of make the gym bigger. But otherwise, it's just maybe a break room and then a couple of private treatment rooms, which are the offices. So standard office build-out works pretty well for them. So what makes that unique compared to, let's say, a veterinarian? A veterinarian goes in and they look at a space, or dentists is another great example. They're very similar in that. They basically have to completely gut whatever it is, and they have to start from scratch. There's a lot of plumbing requirements. For dental, for instance, there's a lot, those of you who have been there, all the stations have to have everything run to each station, right? They have gas running to each station. They have electrical, they have water, they have all that stuff running to each station. So it's a very unique build-out requirement. So as such, there's very unique architecture related to that. So we work with architects specific to that. There's a very unique contractors. They need to understand how to build out those offices. And then lending is unique. There's all these things that are unique, and their build out costs because of that are substantially higher than a standard office.
Because
So
they need surgeries and
yes,
treatment rooms.
all of it. So we'll go in and at a veterinary, at least in Denver Metro, and it varies across the country, but in the Denver Metro area, their build-out costs may be anywhere between, for a veterinarian, anywhere from $130 a foot to $150, $160 a foot. Dentistry would be higher than that, 160 to 180 probably right now in this market. And again, because it's very, it's just expensive to build, but it's way higher than a standard office building. Even if you walk to an office building and it's just nothing, it might be 30, 40 bucks a foot, 50 bucks a foot, because you're just putting up walls and maybe a break room and that kind of thing. So that makes it really unique. And then the other things that make it really unique too is that they have specific lending for doctors that, if you go and you just want to start a CPA firm and you want to buy a bunch of desks and stuff, there's very few banks that are going to give you 0%, zero down financing. Well, we'll finance the whole thing 100%, and you don't have any money, we don't care. We're just gonna, because you have a college degree, we're gonna give you a bunch of money. That doesn't happen. The reason why it happens in healthcare is the banks almost collateralize their degree because they know that veterinarians, dentists, and other healthcare professionals have an extremely low risk of defaulting and extremely low risk of failure for their business because that doctor is they are the collateral really for that loan. And so we have lenders that fall all over themselves to lend to the doctors because they have a very low default rate. That helps us. That exact same concept helps us when we're talking to a landlord. Because I say to the landlord, look, you're talking about a blue chip tenant here. You want them in their center. Most doctors, once they go in here, they're probably not going to move for 15 to 20 years. Yeah. You got someone that's going to be here. So you can do this deal, or you can wait around for a lower tenant improvement allowance deal where you don't have to put as much money into the deal, and you can have an ethnic food restaurant, move in and close up shop 2.5 years later. You can do a CrossFit gym that'll be here for 2 years and shut down. I mean, let's just be real, right? So we're selling the doctors to our landlords as well and saying, here's why you want them, and most of the time we don't even have to really sell them. They already know it. Yeah. They're coming hard after our tenants. We have brokers, we have landlords reaching out to us directly all the time saying, a dentist would be an awesome fit for this. We would love to put a vet in here. Do you have an optometrist that'd be a great fit for this spot? And so they're reaching out to us directly and saying, please, let's get a deal done. Let's figure this out if you have somebody. And so that's part of the uniqueness of working with healthcare clients too.
So, but what are some of the obstacles in finding a space? Other than the availability and the retail.
So there's a few. I mean, there certainly is that. What is the availability like? Yeah. We're in a pretty tight market right now. It's just a hot market, right? So it's more of a landlord's market than it is a tenant or buyer's market. And so the challenge can be, depending on the area, and there's some areas even in Denver Metro where there's plenty of inventory. It's not a problem. I can go out and find 6 or 7 options. So the doctor says, I want to be here. Great, let's go. We'll go tour the market, look at a bunch of options. And we're good. It may also depend on what their size requirements are, because it might be easier to find 2,000 feet versus 10,000 feet. And so there's a lot of factors that will affect that, but certainly the challenges with finding a space depend on where they're looking. And assuming that the market is tight, which is one of the issues that we are facing now, where someone says, I have to be in this area. For instance, if they're working on a renewal and we are looking at other options just to see, and this is what we always do with even our lease renewals. We look at the market, we go and shop it around. You got to have options. I mean, your posture in negotiations are always predicated upon having options. So we go and generate options. And in some cases, we can only find maybe 2 or 3 options. It's not 7 or 8 or whatever. It's just a couple that really would make sense. And in some cases, we're just looking for one. In some markets, it's if I can just find one option, and maybe it's, hey, there's no inventory, but there's a piece of dirt over there.
We can
you know what I mean?
Something.
They're going to build something, or that they've always wanted to own, and we can posture that pretty heavily again for the landlord. I've done that in a situation last year. I was working with, actually earlier this year, working with a veterinarian, and she was looking to renew early and wanted to just go ahead and lock things down. She wanted to get some tenant improvement allowance to do some work in her space. And so what we did was, because she was about 2 years early, I just said, hey, we're going to go find a piece of dirt. I'm going to run all the projections on that dirt as if do a lease versus purchase comparison for you. And we're going to pitch it to your landlord like, hey, she'll do this now, and we're doing it so early because she has to decide. She has to go under contract on this land to have it ready for when her lease is up. So if you're going to have any prayer of keeping her as a tenant, then you're going to need to get really aggressive on this deal. So she had initial proposal from her landlord, and it was they were giving her some TI allowance and certain rate or whatever.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
So I spent a couple hours on that deal, to be honest. We pushed hard. I even sent the landlord the comparison. I said, look, here's what she's evaluating. I'm not joking with you. It makes sense for her for tax reasons,
buy,
for all these things. It makes sense for her to go ahead and buy. She can appreciate that asset long term. There's all these reasons why that makes sense. And he goes, oh, okay, all right. And then we renegotiated. I bettered her deal from their initial offer by $100,000. So 6 figures that she saved. She got all the money she needed to do her build out instead of just a small portion of it. It didn't cost her a thing. She got a lower rate and saved her $100,000 over the course of the 7-year extension that she did. So it's, that's just an example of, even though the market was so tight and there weren't really other options, and honestly, she didn't want to move. She said, I don't have time. I know we talked about doing this ground up thing earlier. I just don't have time to do it. I said, that's fine.
Just don't say that to the landlord.
Just don't say that to the landlord. And it's so critical. And part of our job is controlling the flow of communication and all of that. And that's we're trained in it. So that's why we say you should be represented, even if it's just a renewal or something like that. Don't even have a conversation about it with your landlord without talking to someone that can represent you.
And then you get to be the bad guy.
Exactly. We protect that relationship because, frankly, people sort of see the landlord as the enemy. You want them to be on your side. Yeah, you actually want to have a good relationship.
When the HVAC dies, y'all want to be friends.
You want to be friends. You want them on your side. You want them to like you.
Yeah.
If you get into a contentious lease negotiation, it can fracture that relationship. And so that's what I say to people all the time. Look, let me be the bad guy, and you just be the, I don't have time to do this.
Yeah,
I don't have time to deal with it.
I don't know. Talk to Brad.
And I'm not an expert. I don't do real estate. Which is true.
Totally.
So Brad's the guy. Can you just talk to him? You direct all communication to me.
Yeah.
I get to be the bad guy. I get you the best deal. You keep a good relationship with your landlord, and it's a win-win, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's almost like a lawyer situation where it's like the lawyer gets to be.
I'm sorry, my lawyer is the one doing this.
Yeah, we have to do this through my lawyer. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, it's just, and that's what I tell. Like, you just
that's what I've been told to do.
Pawn it off on me. So like, I'm just trusting the experts here. Like, you talk to him. And landlords try all kinds of tricks, especially on renewals, because they're like, well, they're my tenant. I'm like, yeah, well, they're my client, and I'm representing them. And you're a real estate professional. It's what you do for a living. They do this once every 5, 7, 10 years.
Yeah.
They don't feel comfortable going toe to toe with you. They're not going to do that. So they're bringing in someone that does this for a living to handle it for them, and that's me. And I'm gonna handle it. I
love it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the top mistakes you see people make when negotiating their lease?
Yeah, so I think the first one is that they go into it unrepresented.
They do it on their own.
Try to do it on their own. I know that this is a big thing in business in general, is get the people that are good at fill in the blank to do it for you.
Yeah.
If you're not an expert, know where your limitations are, and then get someone else to do it.
Oh my gosh.
Don't try to be a CPA on your own, right?
Would you say it again, please?
Get the people that are experts in that field to do the things where you're not an expert. You're an expert at being a doctor, a lawyer, a whatever it is. That's what you do, and you're good at it.
And I just want to say that people who recognize that are the most successful.
They are, 100%.
And I talk about this all the time. People think they need to DIY their bookkeeping, or they need to. I had a client be like, "I'm going to do my S corp or my C corp tax return." I'm like, "Why?
Why would
please
you
don't do that."
Yeah.
I was like, "Please don't do that."
Well, and the reason why, obviously, is that there's these huge mistakes and pitfalls that you can make. Like, don't Google it. And that's what I tell people all the time. When I get up in front of a group of doctors or whatever, I say, "Look, I promise not to Google how to perform an appendectomy on my dog if you promise not to Google how to negotiate your real estate. It's just so simple. Like, and it sounds silly, but the point is that you think that you're going to be able to handle it and figure it out on the way. Why would you do that? Yeah, I'm free.
Yeah.
It don't cost anything. And even if I did, honestly,
it's just going to cost them money
it's worth
in the
it.
long run.
Yeah, you make those mistakes, and you literally can make a couple $100,000 mistake. I had one client that I worked with, and they had got an initial proposal from their landlord. It was a large. So again, the numbers are inflated because it was a larger group. They were going to take an entire floor of a hospital, 14,000 square feet, right? So huge square footage, taking a whole floor. It was going to be a totally new build, all this stuff. We got a proposal from their landlord, and they were like, oh, man, what other options are there? So I start looking, and there's just not a lot with that kind of a size requirement. I mean, they needed 12 to 14,000 feet is really what they needed. It's a lot of square footage, right? So there wasn't a lot. Something popped up, a little out of the box, but it was, hey, this could really make sense for you. So we go in and we start negotiating on this other property, all the while trying to negotiate with the landlord. The landlord didn't really believe we had another option. So they weren't really budging. They weren't really doing much. They kind of thought, you don't have an option. And then we got far enough down the road, and I went back to the landlord and said, look, we have a very legitimate option here. If you don't play ball, we're talking about you're losing a huge tenant.
That's a huge tenant.
And then by the time they sort of clued in and went, oh, really? You're serious? Like, you really have an option? Because they just don't always believe us. They had already kind of made their decision and said, hey, this is going to be actually a better fit for us. And at the end of that transaction, it was a $2 million difference. This landlord came back and tried to match that deal and got really close to matching the deal to try to win it back. It's $2 million better.
Holy cow.
From this point to this point, all because we had an option. Now, if they hadn't done that, they don't have the time to do that legwork. And I was working with their COO, but just trying to run a huge practice, right? Didn't have the time to do it. So I found that option. We postured that to the landlord, and it saved them literally $2 million over 10 years. That's not pocket change, right? I mean, that to anybody, regardless of the size of your business or practice, that's bottom line dollars. That's, we always ask people, how much production do you have to do to make $1 of net profit? Well, this is bottom line dollars. This is you're writing a check for your rent every month. And how much production? I mean, that $2 million can represent 8, 10, 12, 15 million in actual production for their net, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's just one example, and that's a kind of an extreme example because the numbers are big, but we do that all the time on a smaller scale.
Right. So, if you need 1,400 square feet, then, or 14, whatever, that's nuts.
But $2
million over 10 years is some significant.
It's a lot of money. Well,
that's some significant cash flow.
Oh, of course. It affects your bottom line. It affects everything. And this is you
could hire an associate. You could.
Of course.
Two associates.
Yeah, right. Break it down by the year. It's $200,000 a year.
That's profit sharing. That's that's a lot
it's
of
substantial
growth cash flow.
Well, and here's a smaller example. I had a client come to me and just said, hey, I just want to work on my renewal, and I need some help with that. I spoke at an event, so a physical therapist. Spoke at an APTA event, which is the American Physical Therapy Association, and
many acronyms.
So many.
I'm so lost.
APTA. I've never heard anyone call it APTA, but
we should
from now on. So it was an APTA event, as everyone knows. What
everybody
APTA is.
knows.
I mean, it's obvious. And he just said, hey, I just want to work on my renewal. They keep pushing rates up in my building, and I just want to see if I can do the best I can do. I don't really know what I should be paying. Could you come and help me? So I step in and said, sure, let's, I reach out to the landlord, kind of, say, hey, I'm going to be representing them. Simultaneously, we go out to the market and look and just see what's out there. So we end up finding him a deal where he gets a brand new build out, turnkey, got an extra treatment room, about $200 more square feet than he was getting at the previous place. Parking was substantially cheaper. He was paying like $100 or $150 and way better. Here he was paying just a couple bucks a month, and they had lots of parking for visitors and all this. And way better scenario all the way around. Well, he saved $1,700 a month moving to the new location with the turnkey build out from what he was paying before. And the best deal that the landlord was willing to give him on a renewal. So we relocated him and moved him. Well, again, it's not $2 million, But $1,700 a month to a private practice owner, where in the physical therapy industry, they haven't had their reimbursements by insurance companies, at least in Colorado, substantially increased since 2007. I just got them a raise. Right?
Yeah.
That's a $1,700 a month raise plus an extra more square footage so we can increase his production, right? So all of a sudden, I was able to impact that single doctor in an incredibly substantial way.
Yeah, and moving's never fun.
It's not. Yeah,
You got a brand
sure.
new space,
But
too.
a brand new space. He was actually super excited. Of course, you get excited about it. I get more space. It's exactly what I want. Build it out the way I want it. I was just making this work. And
That's so awesome.
again, yes, another small example. So there's, anywhere on the spectrum, the bottom line is the main mistake that you can make is try to do it yourself, because it's just you're not going to be able to get the concessions. And I have conversations with people all the time where they go, wait, you mean on my renewal I could get free rent? I could get the landlord to
It's not just for
do
new leases.
renovations and pay money? Oh yeah. I could lower my rent? I thought it just had to keep going up. And in most of these cases, the escalations that they've been paying, they may have been in a 5, 7, 10-year lease, they've been paying escalations that have far outpaced the market, right? And so they're paying above market. The landlord's coming in and saying, whoa, we can't go down. You can only go up.
Right.
Like you
Or we
can't go
can't
back
stay the
down.
same.
Or we can't stay the same. It's got to keep going up. And, I tell people all the time, what do you think is the scenario that puts you in a better position? The first scenario is a landlord about 2 months before your lease expiration, right? Because he knows that you can't really move in 2 months because you're going to have to do build outs and negotiating and stuff. Maybe sometimes in some cases they reach out like 30 days before and just go, hey, we should talk about your renewal. And you say, oh, I love it here. It's so great. I just really want to work out something where we can get a good deal. Oh, of course, I'm going to take good care of you. You've been a great tenant. I'm going to take good care of you. And they send over a proposal, and you don't know if it's good or not. You think it's good because the landlord said it was.
Or it's similar to your current lease.
Or it's about what your current lease is. And what you don't know is you started overpaying when you first signed that lease because you were unrepresented at that point too. And you sign the lease and you go on. Now, do you think that's going to get you the best possible terms? Or you have a broker, you start this process 9 to 12 months out from expiration. That's what we always recommend. We go to the market, we find relocation
some
options, we fully negotiate deals on multiple options. At that point, we go back to the landlord and say, hey, landlord, I'm representing Dr. So-and-so or, whatever practice, Jamie O'Kane CPA, and they're going to be moving. They're really excited about this other option. I wanted to convince them to give you a shot at keeping them as a tenant. So they've agreed to go ahead and let me get you a proposal. So, again, they got one foot out the door here. But if you want to keep them here, I'm going to send over a proposal, terms at which I think they may be willing to consider it, at least put
Based
it
on
on
what we
par
have
with this
now.
other option.
Yeah.
And then, just let us know. So which of those scenarios gets you a better terms? Obviously, having time, because too short a time, that's the enemy. Going at it alone and not knowing the market, that's the enemy. All of those things are working against you in that first scenario. In the second scenario, you have the power, you have the posture. They want to keep you. They know, and you may not know it, but they know that
it's going to cost them more to get
it's
the
going to
next
cost
person
them
in.
so much more to get them. They're going to have to pay way more commission. They're going to have to put in way more tenant improvement allowance to rework the space for the new person.
And that new person probably has a broker.
And that new person has a broker, so they're going to pay a double commission, right? Because
Yeah.
they're going to pay their broker
And-
to list it. Plus, it's probably going to sit vacant. Most spaces sit vacant for 6 to 9 months. So you have all of that lost
Only
revenue.
6 to 9 months, really.
Well, in this market,
That's crazy.
yeah, it's been longer than that. But even if it's 4 or 5 months, it's and you're going to give them all those concessions
Yeah,
that
and then you have to
you're going to
rebuild
give a
out.
new person. So it's an easy logic, but if you don't plan ahead, if you don't start that process early enough, it gets a lot more difficult to create that posture and to get the best terms.
So you do builds, purchases, and leases.
Yeah,
So
everything.
how do you guys help a business owner decide between those 3 options?
Yeah, so we have a we have a lot of tools at our disposal that we've sort of developed that are proprietary tools. One of them that really helps people understand that process is a purchase versus lease comparison. So we'll actually take, let's say the best lease proposal that they're getting from their landlord, or just kind of what's out there, or what we think that the market would be, compare it to what if I bought that building and renovated it, or what if I did a ground up construction project, and we can compare those and then show them, and obviously we always say consult your CPA on this
because, let's do some projections.
Because you really need to do projections, but it's just a simple tool that kind of gets them thinking. We say, hey, take this to your CPA and talk it over with them and just see if it's going to make sense for you. But it kind of takes an advantage of the tax advantages, the depreciation you can do, the, set up an entity for the real estate, the practice or the business then pays that entity, and then you take the proceeds and all the advantages and tax advantages that come from that, from owning that.
And there's a lot of ways to
yes,
get more
and you should call Jamie O'Kane CPA.
Talk to your CPA.
Yeah, talk to
Absolutely
your CPA.
talk to your CPA.
Yeah, and so but we can kind of just in broad strokes say, okay, here's what we're looking at. Now, sometimes we're limited by the inventory, and in Denver right now, it's tough to buy. We've got a lot of outside investors coming in and sniping the best properties and overpaying for them, or just coming in and saying, hey, cash close 30 days. And it's tough for our doctors who are looking at doing SBA loans or other things because they want to keep their capital liquid. It's tough to compete when we're going, it's going to be 60 to 90 day close, and we might need an extra 120 days if things get weird with the SBA. So it's harder to, so sometimes that's one of the things we're facing. But yeah, we can compare all the options and show them, like, here's what would make sense. And in some scenarios, keeping your lease where you're at because you're in the exact right spot you need to be. If you move too far, it would be an issue from a competitive standpoint with other businesses or practices. And so in some scenarios, the lease is the best option. And we'll advise them and say, honestly, I think it makes the most sense. I think we can get good terms here, keep this location. And in some scenarios, it's, hey, we need more space. A doctor right now I'm working with, I really need more space. I have to expand. Well, there's not really an option to expand where he's at. So we're just doing a renewal, and he's going to do a satellite location. That's a couple miles away.
So that's an option.
Of course.
It's really funny. So I was talking to somebody couple months ago who they already have a location.
Yeah.
They don't know if they should keep their location.
Yeah.
I was like, why don't you just rent it out?
Yeah.
Like, people just don't.
Yeah, they don't think outside the box.
Yeah. And you guys can help them figure out what they need.
Of course. Yeah, we can figure out exactly what you need. What'll it look like? We can help you connect with lenders that can kind of pre-qualify for you. Does it make sense to do a second location? It's obviously easier from a lending perspective because they can cash flow it as rent replacement. So it's a little easier to just do an expansion or to do that. So a second location, you want to have some capital, or you have to have the production level that supports it, and just a little bit of financial wherewithal. But you can certainly do it. We can help you decide if that makes sense. Does it make sense to keep this and just keep this footprint, and then maybe if you need more space, like this is like 1,300 feet over here, and then maybe you go over here and build 3,000 feet because then now you can move your surgeries there, and you can do more exams in this location, and your surgeries go to the other location. You do stuff like that. Same with any kind of business. It's just figuring out if the area supports it, and we can help them run some demographic studies and all that kind of stuff to sort of figure out if that would be a good spot for them, and how far away, and all that kind of stuff, just kind of determining that.
All right, so before I ask, because Sarah just walked in, we're going to wave at her real fast. So before I ask my last question, where is the best place to find you?
So the best place, obviously, if wherever you are in the country, the best place is to go to our website, and our website is CARR, CARR.us. And there it's real simple. And there we have links for whatever market you're in. You can actually drill down. And if you're in general commercial, if you're in healthcare, you can drill down and find a broker in your market. And it's really easy to find. It'll tell you, figure out what type of business you're in, or what type of practice you're in. And you can find a broker that does that. Personally, you can find me at brad.sheasby@carr.us.
We'll put that all in the
and it's
episode notes.
You can shoot me an email, and if you don't want to, go into the website and you just want to reach out directly, I can connect you with the right person in your market. And certainly if you're in the Denver metro market, it's something.
So, and y'all work in territories. So
we do, yeah.
So if you're looking for
no
a specific,
competition.
if you're looking for a specific territory, you can go to the website, or you can just email Brad, and he'll set you up with the right person.
That's exactly right. We have no competition, which is that's another thing that makes us unique, and that's kind of more of a back end thing that makes us unique. But all of our brokers work together hand in hand, in concert. We have very specific territory lines and very specific vertical lines, meaning if you're this type of business or practice, then you go to this person. We just
so you guys aren't even competing between. You're just
Not
it's
at
like
all.
This is yours, this is mine, this is your expertise. So you're definitely getting expertise in a specific area.
Yeah,
you don't have you going over to Grand Junction being like.
Yeah, I guess we'll figure it out. Yeah, we have someone that knows that market, that's very specific for that market and can handle it. And what it does is it creates this team atmosphere. And we have situations sometimes where we have a client, for instance, our Northern Colorado guy handles Boulder, Lafayette, Superior, kind of that area, and then of course Fort Collins. But we'll have people saying, I don't know if I want to be in Lafayette or Broomfield, right?
Yeah.
And they're right next to each other. Broomfield is my territory, and so we'll work together and say, hey, we'll just work together, and whatever you decide, that direction you go.
Yeah.
So
if they end up in Broomfield in your territory, you get paid if they end up in there. So
right.
it
Exactly.
Is what it is.
So we just work hand in hand because it all evens out, right? You know, sometimes you'll help someone, they end up over there, and then it's going to come back to you. So we have a real team environment, which is one of the things that's really cool about our company.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so I think I know what you're going to say, but what is the one piece of advice you would give a new business owner who wants a commercial space? I mean, other than get a broker.
Yeah.
What would be really, really important for them to understand?
Yeah, other than get a broker, I think the one thing I would say is obviously get a broker, that's number one. But be realistic about the process and how long it takes.
And what you need.
Yeah, and what you really need. Because I have people that will go in and go, well, I feel like I'm going to grow, so I need to get X number of square feet. And it's like, well, you may never make it to the point where you need to grow because you've just got too much square footage. You know, get what you need. And if you need to do something like get a shorter term, do a shorter term if you feel like you're going to need that space to grow. Don't go out and get 5,000 square feet if you really need 1,500. Get the 1,500. And then, a lot of times landlords will work with you too. Even if you've got term left and you want to grow, they'll go, yeah, great, awesome. We'll move you to another space in the building or whatever. So I think that's one of the things. Be realistic about what you need. Be realistic about the timeline. Sometimes these things take longer, and it's going to depend on what you're looking for. If you're just looking for standard office space, you could probably be up and running in 30 days.
But construction is a thing.
Yeah, but construction is the thing. If you need to make changes to a space, you're looking at months because there's permitting, architecture, all these things that make that process longer.
I had 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you think it is.
I tell people, I'm like,
just add 3 months.
Add 3 months to that.
Because I have people that come in and go, well, they're a doctor, right?
Yeah.
So not a simple always build out requirement. So I want to be open by the first of the year. And this is like 15 days ago. And you're going, so that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
So some of my job is just education
managing expectations
of it's going to take longer than you think. It's going to cost more than you think. And you just have to be prepared for that. Yeah. And some come in a little green, a little unrealistic. And so I spent a lot of time, honestly, just educating people about here's what the process is going to look like. And then down the road, they're not surprised when it costs more than they thought and it takes longer than they thought. Hey, remember when we talked about this? So I'm always like, it's the old, under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do my best and we're going to work really hard. We're going to see what we can find you, but just be ready.
Yeah. I have a startup we're working with right now. And I'm like, I need a weekly update because I need to know when things start happening. You know? Because we were like, January 1st. Yes, it'll be open by January 1st. Now we're like, April 1st. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be 4 more months. We're just going to keep
adding 3 more months.
Yeah. And it's just that's part of the process. And obviously there are things you can do to be efficient in the process.
Yeah, there's a lot to do.
But there's just a lot to be done. I was telling someone who they were kind of getting ready to open. It's kind of like when you get married. You get married and you have a 6-month engagement, and no matter how much you prep work you do, how much time you spend doing
doing
it.
everything
When
that
you get
week
down to that
before.
last week,
totally true.
it's bananas, right?
Yeah.
The last week is just insane. So it's kind of like, it's sort of like that where
like
no
tax
matter
season.
how, there's going to be stuff. Yeah, exactly. Just all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. And so that's just part of the deal. And so that, just be realistic about it. And then, not just brokers, but get the right people in place,
your
get the
experts.
experts. Don't try to do things yourself. If you have to Google it, you shouldn't be doing it yourself. That's what I try to, in business. Like, your business is way too important for you to be
That's
trying
so
to
true.
Google things, right?
Yeah, stop trying
And just
to
because you have
duct
access to the
tape it.
information doesn't mean you can actually figure out and do it correctly. Right?
Duct tape
Yeah.
does not work in
No,
business.
no, it doesn't. You need to have the experts do their expert thing and handle that portion of your business for
I
you.
love it. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.